Hello and welcome to the Aim High podcast. I'm your host, Bud Evans. Today, I'm excited to have Dave Dubeau with us, a seasoned expert in strategic capital raising for real estate investments. Dave will share his journey from active investing in diverse markets like Canada, Costa Rica, to mastering the art of securing funding before finding deals. We'll dive deep into his approach to building meaningful investor relationships and how this can be a game changer in the industry. Join us where we provide real estate investors with the tools to achieve generational wealth. Let's aim high together. This is episode 81.
Hello and welcome to the Aim High podcast. I'm your host, Bud Evans, and today I am here with Dave Dubeau. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Bud, I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on the Aim High podcast. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. Listen, every time, the great part about this is I just sit here at my desk and I talk to really cool people about really cool stuff and the things that they do, and then I provide value to other people. You know how it is.
I do know how it is. That's a wonderful way to do it.
Yeah, the Property Profits Real Estate Podcast.
That's right.
So-
And I'm going to have the honor of having you on as a guest one of these days pretty soon.
And it will be an honor, absolutely. Dave, would you do me a favor? Other than that, would you tell me who you are and exactly what you do?
Yeah, so I am a real estate entrepreneur. I do all kinds of different things when it comes to real estate. These days, not so much of an active investor, more of a passive investor. But where to start? Geez, it's a family thing. The family home where I grew up, Bud, was a one unit of a sixplex that my grandfather and my father built. So that just seemed like that was normal. Then my mother was a real estate investor. Unfortunately, she and my father split up, but she ended up building up a portfolio of about 50 doors as a single mom, working mom, as a school teacher, raising a snot-nosed kid, yours truly, way back in the 80s before there were cool guys like you with great podcasts and all this kind of good stuff. So just grew up around that. Didn't pay much attention to it, being a normal twit of a teenager. Just around that. Went to university, got a useless degree, decided to travel around, ended up spending almost 14 years in Latin America, 10 years living in beautiful San Jose, Costa Rica, had a language training company down there, got married, had kids, all that kind of stuff. And that's where I first started to tiptoe into real estate investing. I came across something we would call pre-foreclosure opportunities. So I did a couple of those, made a few bucks with that, and that's how I got started.
Did you start buying in Costa Rica first? Did you find yourself back here investing? Where exactly did you start out?
Again, I did those first two pre-foreclosures in Costa Rica.
Mhm.
And then in 2003, which, geez, that's a long time ago now, I packed up my Costa Rican family and brought them kicking and screaming up to the Great White North in British Columbia, Canada. And we settled down in a small town of about 100,000 people. And yeah, that's where I really jumped into real estate investing full steam. I watched one of those late night infomercials. You too can get rich in real estate with little or no money down, which was
Was that
perfect because I hadn't sold my
by chance?
business in Costa Rica. So that's what I had, little or no money and zero credit. So started doing creative type deals, and did, did a number of them. I think I did 18 of them in about a year and a half. And that kept the lights on, and that kind of got me into the game. And
Right.
then eventually got into a different strategy, more of a little bit longer term rent to own kind of a strategy, lease option type strategy, and then worked up into multifamily properties after that.
Okay. A completely different world going from Costa Rican real estate to Canadian real estate, right?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it was a big shift, that's for sure, but a lot of fun.
Great. What would you say is your number one niche? What do you really concentrate on and laser focus?
These days, I really concentrate on my consulting business, and we help other real estate investors to raise private capital for their own deals. So that's my main gig. And then every once in a while, I'll partner up usually with one of my clients
Mhm.
and invest passively in one of their deals. So that's how kind of I keep my fingers in the game that way. But I realized a long time ago, I really enjoy the marketing side of things. I'm not that great of a real estate operator myself, bud. So I prefer to let the experts do that.
Right. Hey, private money lenders are some of the most popular people on the planet. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad gig.
Yeah. Let's go through one of your first deals. Which is the one that really like when you're like, man, that's the first time I nailed it?
One of my very first deal was when I was 12 years old, bud. My mother, who I mentioned was a real estate investor, she and my older brother, who's quite a bit older than I am, were building a duplex. So they're doing a little development deal. They're building this property, and I could hear them talking about this, and it wasn't very far from where we lived. So I was seeing stuff happen. I said, "Hey, you guys, I want to be part of this too." I was 12. So they said, "How much money do you have?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'd saved up like $200, which was a lot of money back then. That was a
Yeah.
long time ago." They said, "Sure, you can invest your $200 with us." So I did, and I proudly became the owner of the garbage stoop. That was my piece of the deal. So that was my first little foray into real estate investing. First actual so what was the question? Which is the first deal? It was like really a good one.
Yeah, what's the one that sticks out in your head where you're like, you know what, that one, that's when all of the stars aligned and I just nailed it.
Yeah, so it'd be probably early days when I was doing the creative low money, no money down type deals. I was driving around in my I buy houses minivan because we had little kids. So I had it was the minivans phase, and it was all deckled up with I buy houses, any price, any condition, any place kind of thing. And this lady chased me down in her car. I thought, oh crap, did I cut her off? Did something happen? But she's honking, she's frantic. So I stop, pull over, have a chat with her, and find out that she and her husband had built their dream home in a kind of a vacation community about 45 minutes away from where I live. And 6 months after they finished it all up, the husband unfortunately passed away suddenly. So, dang, there she is. She's 1,000 miles away from her family and friends. She's living in this big house all by herself that where it was their dream property. She didn't want any more. And she had been trying for 3 years at the time to sell this thing, to get this thing sold. She'd gone through numerous realtors. She was living at a distance. She was trying to maintain this thing. Anyhow, it was a nightmare for her. So I didn't have the money to buy it outright from her. I didn't want to, but I ended up doing an option to purchase on that property with a right to assign my option to somebody else
Mhm.
and keep the difference. And then I just went to work marketing this creatively, the way that most realtors at the time weren't, none of them were doing it, and ended up getting a buyer for that property, solved her problem, made about 35 grand myself for my trouble, and got some lovely people into a dream property that they wouldn't have heard about otherwise.
Nailed it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. So now there's always the antithesis,
Oh,
right?
you're gonna
There's,
rub some salt, are you? Is that what
there's
it's
always the one on the other end, right? I'm going through one right now, man. Flip number 104 is killing me right now. So,
Oh God.
so what was the one that sticks in your head and you just go, oh man, if I
Yeah.
had,
It does. And it was when I got into the rent to own space. And my brother, who was also doing rent to own stuff, had he's a very smart guy, too smart for his own good sometimes. So he had found some sort of little government thing that was going on that was to help first time home buyers and this and that and the other thing. And it was bottom line, it was a tricky way that we could help somebody who was absolutely broke come up with a few bucks through a government thing for towards their down payment. So that would really could potentially open up the floodgates for rent to own people, right? Because biggest challenge with rent to own people quite often is not only they got bad credit, but they usually don't have much money to put down as a non-refundable option fee towards their down payment. So bottom line, I found a couple that were keen to go through this process and get into a home. And the kind of rent own I was doing, bud, was called tenant. We called it tenant first. So you'd find the tenant, and then yourself or with some investors, you would buy a property for them, lease option it to them for the next 3 years or so, help them get qualified for financing, and then sell it to them at the end. So that was the plan. And it worked. I'd done that several times. But this couple, I interviewed them, and my spidey senses were saying, hey, something's not right here, but I ignored it. And I got them into this house, bought them a house in an area I shouldn't have, and I wouldn't have otherwise. And then when the lady told me that, because they weren't well off,
Mhm.
she was a stay at home mom. The husband was doing whatever and was hit and miss with the income. When she told me that her budget for coffee and donuts, so like the Canadian version of Dunkin' Donuts, was $800 a month.
Whoa.
What she spent on that. Then it was like, oh, I just knew that things were going to go off the rails pretty quickly, which they did. I think they only ended up lasting about 3 months with the agreement as was. And they started making missing payments and this and that. And then finally got them out of the property. And they had 5 kids, all under the age of 12. And the property was an absolute disaster.
Mhm.
I had to put a ton of money into fixing it up just to get it to the right level. And then rent to own, a little bit like flipping, can be a bit of a speculative type thing. If the market hits the doldrums when you're in the middle of a deal or it goes down, it can really suck. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened. So I had this house. Now I had to put a bunch of money into getting repaired. It was vacant for a while. It was cash flow negative, and then the value went down. So I ended up having to sit on that stupid thing for like another 3 years as a regular rental, going negative cash flow because it didn't make sense as a regular rental.
Yeah.
And anyhow, that was a good lesson. That numerous things. I quickly got out of that style of real estate investing after I realized how risky it really was. And number two, it's trust that gut instinct. Do your due diligence way better on people, and don't get caught up in the emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. Listen, you're talking about Tim Hortons when you say
Yeah.
$800 budget. Yeah. Yeah. I was stationed in Kandahar. The Canadians were in charge over there and they brought a Tim Hortons in. And I was the mayor of sentiments and I might have had a little bit something to do with, we now have one on Route 130. Just saying. I might like that coffee a little bit, but I can't see spending $800 on it. That's
Oh, man,
insane.
I couldn't either. It's mind-boggling, but
Yeah.
anyhow.
So how do you recover for something like that? Did you like settle back, throttle back, or did you like go full force? How did you recover?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was involved in a whole bunch of different things at the same time. So, yeah, I just sucked it up, went negative for a number of months, subsidized things, got things fixed up, and then just the quickest way I could, I got it stabilized, got some good tenants in there, at least covering most of the expenses, and then just held on to it till the market turned and then sold it and ended up making a profit
Yeah.
at the end of the day anyhow. But yeah, it was painful at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you working on now, Dave? What do you got going on? I know you're talking about the consultant. I know you got the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So our main thing, bud, is we work with both mom and pop real estate investors who are just getting started with raising capital, as well as we're starting to work with higher level real estate investors, syndicators and whatnot, who have tapped out their existing network and we're helping them to do lead generation with accredited investors and get them connected that way and raise capital that way. So we work with both the newbie capital raisers, help them get things up and running, as well as the more established ones.
Great. And how do you start them out? Is it you got a
Like a
website?
newbie?
Is it, yeah, yeah. How do you start them
Yeah.
out?
What I do, Bud, is I look at everything I did wrong
Yeah, right.
when I started raising capital, and I reversed and engineered the whole thing. So when I was first raising capital, the first big mistake it was for one of these rent to own deals, actually. So I'd self financed my first few, ran out of cash, ran out of credit, needed to bring on some investors, and I lined up a beautiful deal. And I'd heard some gurus say, hey, just find a good deal and the money will find you. Have you ever heard that one?
Yeah, all the time, man.
I'd
All
like
the
to
time.
smack whoever said that in the first place. I'd like to
Nope.
smack them upside the head. That did not prove to be true for me. So anyhow, had this great rent to own deal, really good tenant buyers lined up. They had money, they had really good income. They'd gone through a business bankruptcy a few years before and they were back on track. So they were like ideal. They were the perfect tenant buyer profile. Found them a house, got it under contract, needed to raise 85 grand or something like that to close on it. And I had 2 weeks to come up with the financing and close on this deal. So I started scrambling. I thought, they'd already given me like 15 grand as an earnest money deposit. It's time to get going here. So I knew the money wasn't going to magically find me. I had to do some outreach somehow. So I'd always heard, hey, you need to raise some money quick, pick up the phone and start dialing for dollars. Start cold calling people that you know in your network, and that'll work nicely. I tried that. I called, rejection, and my poor little ego couldn't quite handle all that rejection. So I tried it for a while and then quit because it sucked. I was doing it all wrong too. But anyhow, that wasn't working too nicely. Then I also heard, hey, you need to find money, go out and turn every conversation into a real estate conversation.
Yeah.
Network schmooze, BNI, Toastmasters, where the heck, Chamber of Commerce, wherever you get in. My little 30-second commercial, shaking hands. Got a lot of weird looks, raised zero capital, and wasted a lot of time. Then I thought, hey, this is such a good deal, because it was a good deal. If I just get this in front of enough people and they see it, it'll sell itself. So I did one smart thing. I put together a target group of potential investors, names, email addresses, got them all in a little CRM system. And then the dumb thing I did is I just cold blasted them all this deal with a PDF and said, basically, hey, it's Dave. I got a great deal. Have you got any dough? Not quite that bad, but say, so I sent that out and I only had 2 days left in this whole process by the time I got around to doing that. And I remember that I got up the next day and I was so thrilled because I saw a number of replies to my message. I thought, finally, something's working here. Until I started opening the replies and they all basically said, hey, Dave, dude, haven't heard from you in forever. And here you are hitting me up for cash for a deal. Take a hike.
Yeah.
One guy said, Dubeau, I haven't heard from you in 18 years. And the first thing that comes across my desk is you hit me up for cash.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was not cool. Bottom line, bud, lost that deal. Ticked off my tenant buyers, had to refund them all their money. They'd already given notice where they're renting. So it was a big deal, right? As I was ticked off my realtor because wasted a bunch of their time. Ticked off the seller, tied up their property for several weeks, seller agent. And I live in a fairly small community. So I had some major egg on my face for a while because of that. But it was a good lesson. I said, okay, what have I learned after I quit pouting? What did I learn from this process? Number one, big lesson was when it comes to the chicken and the egg, the money of the deal, which comes first? Have your money lined up first, then go looking for the deal. So that was a big light bulb moment for me. Like Confucius said, dig your well before you're thirsty.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to get working on this whole lead gen and capital raising thing. At the same time, I'm looking at deals. So they both go together. That was the first big takeaway. Second big takeaway was, you know what? Most people don't want to have a deal cold pitched to them right off the get-go, and everybody makes this mistake. So I said, oh, and I had a background in marketing, so that's why I was really kicking myself. So it's like, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I came up with a process, and I call it edutaining communication. So it's a little educational, hopefully a little bit entertaining, not slapstick, not chuckle type of thing, but telling stories, right? That's key. So the goal is get the word out about what you're up to with real estate investing, but don't pound people over the head with it. It's like create curiosity, then get them to book a call, then go through a presentation of what you're up to with real estate. You're not necessarily selling any specific deal, but I want to get the investors lined up. So my goal at the end of a presentation, bud, isn't to get a check for 100 grand. It's to get them to sign off on an expression of interest or a letter of intent. So I, Dave, am ready, willing, and able to invest a sum of up to whatever, 100 grand with Bud. If he finds me a good flip deal sometime within the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever we agree upon, I sign it, you sign it, I get a copy, you get a copy. And now you know that person is more than just a tire kicker. They have actually signed off on something. It's legally binding, it's not, but the likelihood of them coming through when you've got a deal rises exponentially. And then you want to have more of those people signed up than you actually need, so that when you need the money, you've got a little bit of supply and demand in your and you're not scrambling. So, does that make sense, Ben?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You'd be surprised at how many people don't ask the question like, hey, if I were to bring you in on a deal, how much would you be willing to invest way before you even had the deal in hand? Because here's what I see. going back to that guru, find the deal and the money will come.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, I got this deal. I'm looking at this and I'm offering somewhere between 8 and 12% in general returns for my investors, blah, 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 all that stuff I teach.
Yeah.
And then you call the guy who's like, yeah, man, I'm in, let's do it. And you're like, yeah, great. How much you got? 5,000. Dude, I need, right? I need $50,000 to close this deal, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's aggravating for everybody, right? So
Yeah.
get those people lined up first. And then again, for me, a real key thing was getting them to sign off on a document. It's
Yeah.
not legally binding, but it's just so much more powerful than having somebody say, hey, bud, yeah, when you got a deal, let me know. I might be interested. Right.
Right.
Those are tire kickers. So if they won't commit to signing off on an expression of interest, they're not serious.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
man, I can't tell you how many times you run into that situation. It's why our program is 4 pillars. And the first pillar is funding,
Yeah.
right? Finding those deals.
There you go.
Similar-
Yeah,
very-
exactly.
Very much
Raise
like
the-
what you're talking
have the
about.
money lined up first.
Yeah. It's great to buy rental properties, but if you don't have the money, you're never going to get one. So,
Yeah, pretty much anything. Exactly.
so now look, you're expanding. What's next? What's on the horizon?
Keep chugging along with the services that we offer, expanding into working with more advanced real estate entrepreneurs, helping to do lead generation for them when it comes to finding new accredited investors that they don't already have a connection with, helping them optimize their existing systems, being more efficient with their communications, really leveraging referrals and testimonials, which most people really suck at. So
Yeah.
just squeezing all the juice possible for them.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Just keep going, man. Just keep growing.
That's what we're doing.
Fantastic. Now, I'm going to ask you, what is one thing that you learned as your wealth increased, Dave?
One thing that I learned as my wealth increased is you always got to keep an eye on it because it can increase and it can decrease as well quite quickly. So it's a matter of being disciplined. One big thing, a big resource I would recommend to all of your listeners is a book called Profit First. And
Yeah.
a version that's been written for real estate investors as well. I think it's David Richter, if I'm not mistaken. But I read the original one, and that really changed how I approached business, allocating funds, putting things aside up front, and focusing on, like the title says, profit first, because for most of us, that was the last thing we were thinking about when we were running our businesses. So that would be a good resource I'd highly recommend to a lot of your listeners.
Yeah. I got to hang out with David Richter down in Lakeland, Florida at one of Tarek El Musa's. I was teaching down there. Got to hang out with him he's a great dude. And that
Yeah, he
book,
is. Yeah, I
I had to buy a
interviewed him.
second copy because I left mine at home and I was like, I got to get a signature, man. So I had to buy a second copy. So now I have 2.
There you go.
Never a bad thing. Okay. Dave, we're going to move on to the Soaring 4. These are the same 4 questions that I ask every guest who can potentially help someone who's just starting out achieve new heights.
Sure.
The first question is, what is something that keeps you motivated?
Oh, enjoying the game. That really is. So I think I was talking about this with some buddies of mine, old high school buddies that have more of a traditional 9 to 5 kind of job.
Mhm.
And they and I are getting the age where people are starting to think about retirement.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't think I'll ever retire. I don't want to retire. I don't know what the heck I would do with my time. I don't have that many hobbies.
Mhm.
And more importantly, I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy being part of it. So I've had the privilege of working with some people in the real estate space. One gentleman, the original Al Lowry, who Robert Kiyosaki learned real estate investing from. If you read the Purple Book, and he talked about taking a course in Hawaii in the 70s, he took it from this guy. And Al kept going into his 90s. Like I met him when he was in his early 90s and he was still speaking on stages. He's still doing stuff. He was still active. One of my good friends and associates is Ted Thomas, who is a real estate guru based out of Florida. He's in his mid 80s now and showing no signs of slowing down and loves what he does. So I don't think I'll ever retire. I think it's a matter of just keep chugging along. If you enjoy what you're doing, keep working. Look at your president and your presidential, probably the next president.
38 and 81. Yeah.
God, yeah, the president's 81. Trump's way up there. He's in his high 70s.
Yeah.
No sign of slowing down for either one of those guys. So, taking politics aside, just the fact of getting older doesn't mean that you
Right.
have to retire.
I am retired and my family wants me to slow down. And I'm like, nah, I can't. Why? So now I just take the first 4 hours of every day and I'm like, all right, this is for me. And I go to the gym and I'll do a 5 mile walk or whatever after whatever.
Yeah.
Walk the dog, have a great time. Then it's on for
Then
4
it's on.
6
And
or
that
8
keeps
hours.
you. So it's a nice balance. So that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. So what is one thing that you learned that completely changed your mindset?
You know what? It would be early days in my business life in Costa Rica, having that language school. I learned the importance of marketing, like getting the word out, getting known, getting in front of your ideal prospective client or customer, creating irresistible offers, keeping that constant, consistent, edutaining communication going, attracting instead of chasing people. So that's way more than one. What's the idea of this marketing and attracting people to you made a huge difference. Great, interesting story about that. Nothing to do with real estate, but everything to do with real estate. One of the many businesses I've done and tried and over the years, I had an advertising business. And what we did is we would create these kind of like those, remember those old hotel do not disturb signs that
Yeah.
you'd hang on the door?
Well, door
We
hangers.
we got those on steroids and they were all coupons with ads to different local businesses and stuff like that. And I got into this thinking, hey, what a great way to get my I buy houses ad on the front of every single house in my community and have other people pay for it with these ads. And the franchise guy that I bought it off of said, hey, these ads are so great because they're exclusive. They sell themselves. Baloney. Nothing sells itself. So I remember I had to go out door to door, business to business, and I'd walk in the door and the store owner would look up. They'd be happy to see a new client or customer come in the door. They quickly realize it's just another damn ad sales guy. And they kicked me out, basically. And I did this over and over again and hated it. I can remember sitting in the I Buy Houses minivan with my white knuckly yet trying to
Yeah.
get the guts up for the next rejection. So then I said, hey, why don't we do something different? So I got together a few non-competing people that had different services that were great for local business owners. And we put together a business builder workshop. So we put together an event. We invited, I can't remember, had like 120 local business owners out. Each person did their little song and dance, made an offer at it. I did that for my ads. I had a line, instead of chasing people down, I had a lineup of people with their credit cards out buying my ads ahead of time, which was unheard of for advertising. It's usually after the fact, and sold out several editions of that whole thing just like that by applying marketing and public speaking and this whole thing uh, to something nobody had done it before.
It's amazing. Just a small shift, and the next thing was just boom,
Huge
the light
difference in
switch.
results. Exactly. Yeah.
What tools are you using to keep yourself on track?
Oh man, lots of them. Slack's probably my go-to thing, bud. That keeps me and my team all connected in real time. And I work with about a dozen people, not employees, all subcontractors, lots of virtual assistants and whatnot overseas. I think my last time I was counting, the team represents 8 different countries and nationalities and the whole bit, all the way from the Philippines to India to Mexico to Colombia to Canada to the States. We got people from all over. So we all stay in touch using Slack in real time.
Nice. Yeah. We use a combination of Slack and Asana, so I can totally relate.
Yeah.
I used to ask this question, what's one thing you would change if you had to start over? But I'm going to change it because people keep answering it exactly the same way. So if you had pulled a Grant Cardone and they dropped you off in the middle of town and had taken all of your money and everything that you had today, what would you do differently?
First of all, that's BS. That's not Grant Cardone. That was originally Robert Allen,
Okay.
who did actually came up with that challenge and did that challenge with real estate investing. But okay, to answer your question,
Learn something new every day.
yeah, yeah, Grant stole that from Robert Allen. So what would I do if you know what? I would quickly put up, yeah, that's the beautiful thing. I would quickly put up my online shingle because it doesn't really matter where the heck I am and get the word out and just reach out via LinkedIn, find all the real estate investors and create an irresistible offer and get things rolling within a week.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's perfect, man. Dave, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
They can go to my website, which is moneypartnerformula.com. Poke around, check out the podcast, grab a copy of my book a call, book an opportunity to get interviewed on my podcast, whatever they want to do. Everything is at moneypartnerformula.com.
Great. Dave Dubeau, hey, thank you very much for being on. I know you're a busy guy, man. I really do appreciate your time.
Mr. Bud Evans, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I am really looking forward to being on your podcast very shortly.
Likewise.
All right.